We have now reached the 10th session in a 14-part series called The God Who Is There. My name is Don Carson. Somewhat hesitantly, for reasons that will become clear in the address itself, I've called this session The God Who Dies and Lives Again. The stunning reality is that the Bible ultimately brings to a focus everything else it says and refracts all its light down into Jesus' death and Jesus' resurrection from the dead. If you rummage through the Bible to uncover whatever you can about, say, economics and social justice, or about bioethics and the nature of human beings, or about personal and corporate ethics, but fail to integrate whatever you find with the ways in which the Bible makes Jesus' death and resurrection absolutely central to all faithful Christian understanding and teaching and life, you end up distorting the Bible. If you want to understand what the Bible means by the word gospel or good news, you must grasp why Jesus' death and resurrection constitute such spectacularly good news. These events are at the heart of the whole Bible. This one talk, rightly absorbed into your life with repentance and faith, will change you forever. When you think of the biographies of important people, whether artists or football hunks or an Einstein, political figure, doesn't matter. When you think of these biographies, never is there any suggestion that they were born in order to die. If the party is no longer living, then there is some mention of the person's death, no doubt, which may be heroic or ordinary, prolonged or quick, accidental. It may be all kinds of things. But never do we speak of someone being born in order to die. That's true for Muhammad. It's true for Gautama the Buddha. There may be stories of their deaths, but no one suggests that the purpose of their coming was to die. Which is why the four Gospels, that is the four first books of the New Testament, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, are so hard to classify. People have written learned tomes on what genre of literature it is. Is it a tragedy? Well, Jesus rises from the dead. Is it, literarily speaking, a comedy? But it's of a different species. It's too serious for that. And the centrality of the cross and what's achieved and the barbaric awfulness of it all, amidst its splendor, it can't be reduced to one-word terms. Is it a biography? But that's as close as you can get. It's somewhat akin to first-century Hellenistic biographies, I suppose. But there aren't any other first-century Hellenistic biographies where the plot line says that the reason the bloke came was to die. It feels different. Have you been exposed to some of this literature that gets promoted, roughly every Easter season? Around about Easter, the press loves to drag out the latest scholar who's written something on the Gospel of Judas, or the Gospel of Thomas, or any other of these Gospels, and various people are trying to say, you know, these are as authoritative as the Gospels in the New Testament, and we should incorporate them again too. And originally Christianity was much broader, and then it got narrow and orthodox and mean. But originally it was much, much broader. There were a lot of Gospels. Well, let's get one or two things straight even there. The earliest of these other so-called Gospels is about mid-2nd century, and they drag on for another century and a half or 2 centuries. None of them is connected with the first generation of eyewitnesses the way the canonical Gospels are. That is, the Gospels in our Bible. Not one of them. But there's more to it than that. Consider the so-called Gospel of Thomas. It's a short book of 114 sayings, ostensibly sayings of Jesus. They're sayings ascribed to Jesus, and 2 tiny, tiny, tiny little historical snippets. That's it. In other words, it's completely unlike what a gospel is in the New Testament. In fact, in the first century, people didn't speak of 4 gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Do you know what they said in the first century? There's one gospel, the gospel of Jesus Christ. The one gospel of Jesus Christ according to Matthew, according to Mark, according to Luke, according to John. One gospel with various witnesses describing what this good news about Jesus Christ is really about. This spectacular, invasive news. And only later did people start referring to them rather loosely as the Gospel of Matthew or the Gospel of Mark. But even then, it's really important to see that all 4 of these books, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, they say something about the forerunner, the one who announces Jesus, John the Baptist. They say something about his origins. They talk extensively about his ministry, what he did, what he said, how he preached, some of his miracles, his parables, his sayings, some of his sermons. And then at the end, all along, the story has been driving toward his death. And at the end, he is crucified. And he rises again. Part of the plot line in each book, a huge part of the plot line, is how Jesus starts talking about how he is going to die. In Matthew 16, when Peter confesses that Jesus really is the promised Messiah, the one who comes from David's line, the one that they were expecting. Jesus goes on to say, yes, and you know, I must go to Jerusalem and suffer many things and be crucified and the 3rd day rise again. And the disciples said, no way. That can't be. The promised Davidic figure, the promised Messiah, he's so strong, and someone like you who can do miracles. I mean, how are they going to stop you? You can do miracles. But Jesus keeps insisting again and again and again. Part of the plot line of each of the Gospels is how he keeps insisting he's going to die. And then he says some very strange things too. I'm not going to die as a martyr, he says. No one can take my life from me. I lay it down of myself. I have the power to lay it down, and I have the power to take it again. He doesn't classify himself as a martyr, but as a sacrifice. He's not simply the vicious victim of a nasty historical mistake. He's a willing sacrifice. That's why these books sound so strange to anybody who reads a lot of biographies. There's no one quite like him. And even when he is being arrested and dragged away, his disciples wonder if the place of courage now is to pull out a sword and slash at one of the attackers. Jesus' response is, don't you understand? I could, in theory, call 12 legions of angels. Do you really think a few Roman troops are going to stand up to 12 legions of angels? But he didn't come to be rescued. He came to be butchered. He came to die. Moreover, in ordinary biographies, once you do have them safely in the ground, they stay there.